Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into around why your maintenance calories feel so low, or we could also phrase this as why you feel like if you eat anything over, say, 1,500 calories, you end up gaining weight there. So again, we can take this both ways. Either, hey, your maintenance calories feel low, or you just feel like anytime you add some calories, you just gain a bunch of weight there. But first, before we go into that, I'm always looking to add motivated individuals to my client roster. So if you guys are interested in adding some muscle, body recomp, fat loss, improving performance, recovery, just how you feel from day to day, then my one-on-one coaching is for you. And if you want to find out more about it, you can fill out or click the link in the show notes, or reach out to me on Instagram, Jeff, HOEH_, and that's where I'm most active too. And I post a lot of content there, but you can also reach out to me there, and you can ask any questions around the podcast as well too there. Cool. So with that out of the way, though, let's dive into today's topic around why you feel like your maintenance calories are so low, or why you feel like you gain weight even though you gain weight on a lower amount of calories than you would like there, or you feel like, yeah, anytime you eat over, say, 1,500 calories, you just gain a bunch of weight, right? That's a common thing I hear, right? I feel like if I eat over 1,500 calories, I just balloon up. My maintenance calories are lower than I thought they would be. And so these are two common phrases that I will see in this situation. It's either that they feel like their maintenance calories should be a bit higher than what they are, or you feel like you eat a low amount of calories and you just gain a bunch of weight. And so again, there's kind of two ways that you can go about it, but they all stem from some of these same issues here. So here are the most common reasons I see that this happens. So first, we have, you think any weight gain equals fat gain. So this is a big thing that happens for a lot of people, is they're so scared to see scale weight come up at all. So the second your body weight increases even slightly, you just slash calories again. So you may weigh in one day at 160, and then the next day you weigh in at 162, and you're like, oh crap, overate yesterday, I'm in a surplus, I need to drop my calories back. And you're just overly scared to see those scale weight fluctuations come up. And look, any sort of fluctuation from one day to the next is not body fat gain, it's not muscle gain, it's not muscle loss, it's not fat loss, it's just within the normal tissue change, or the water weight changes that you can see from person to person each day, right? So really here, what we're looking at is, where are the trends at over time? But again, your water weight can fluctuate greatly by what you ate yesterday, sodium, carbohydrates, more or less, the type of training you did, sleep can impact it, stress on the body. Did you go to the bathroom? These are all things that can impact that from day to day. But if we are consistently in this state where anytime we see our scale weight come up, we feel like we need to restrict, whether that's, okay, I need to go back to a fat loss phase, or again, you have this ups and down where you have a couple of days over the weekend where maybe you ate a bit more, and then the next 5 days you're working on getting your weight down, and then it's just this vicious cycle, right? And so what happens in this situation is that your body adapts to this chronically lower intake, right? So you're going to have a lower total daily energy expenditure. So when we're consistently trying to keep our weight down and not see it come up at all, we're going to expend less energy over time, because our body is going to adapt to that calorie amount. Now, this doesn't mean that it's a forever thing, because the body is adaptive down and up. So if you start to eat a bit more calories, it will likely adapt upwards as well too, but it definitely will adapt down. It's probably going to be more likely to adapt down than it would be on the way up. Your body was going to prioritize avoiding losing a ton of tissue over gaining some tissue, because I'd say that's stored energy. We could use that later. That is very valuable to us. Obviously, that can become very problematic over time if you continue to do that. And there likely are some sort of adaptations to limit fat gain in some capacity. Some people, their bodies are a lot better at that. Some people's bodies are not as good. And then there's obviously some dysfunction that you'll run into over time here with that. Insulin resistance, inflammation, all the downsides that we see with excessively high as you start to gain body fat there. Other hormonal issues, right? Testosterone will go down. Women's hormones will start to get out of whack. That balance of progesterone and estrogen will start to get out of whack. So there's a lot of downstream impacts of that. But again, you will lower your total daily energy expenditure. Your body's, hey, we're not getting in enough fuel regularly. And so we need to make sure that we don't lose a bunch of body fat, because it can be problematic over time. So your body will lower your total daily energy expenditure. So how much you burn throughout the day can go down over time if you're consistently doing this, right? One day of doing it, it's not going to impact things. You run a good 6-week diet, that's not going to be a problem, right? Or a 6 to 12 week well-structured diet. Again, you may see some sort of adaptation, but that's not problematic. It's when you do this regularly and over time that it can start to become problematic. You're probably going to have, your body will adapt by lower spontaneous movement. This is one of the benefits of consuming a bit more calories, being at your actual energy balance, potentially even a surplus for a small period of time. And this kind of comes back to the adaptation upwards, is your body will potentially expend, just be more wasteful with energy. Whereas if we're consistently in this lower energy intake state, there will be lower spontaneous movements because of that. Your body's really good at starting to slow down some of those processes there. We're going to have lower recovery capacity from training. So again, your body's going to be, you're not going to be able to do as much. There's going to be that lower recovery capacity there just because, again, we don't have as much fuel on board. Our body's a little bit more thrifty and doesn't want to spend as much energy on things that it doesn't feel like are super important. In training, adaptations are not super important to the body when it senses that energy intake is consistently low. And then you'll have also lower thyroid output and hormonal adaptation. This is where a lot of people, if they're consistently in this lower energy state because they're scared to see their scale weight come up at all, you're going to have lower thyroid output. So these are people that then end up, the thyroid is not optimized, and then look at their blood work done and say, oh, hey, your thyroid's low. You need to get on some medication. And it's like, now you're just like putting a Band-Aid on the situation when it's, hey, you probably are just under eating too often and you need to be okay with a little bit of weight gain here. And again, that doesn't automatically mean that it's fat gain either, right? And then you'll see some hormonal adaptation as well too, right? Because again, when we talk sex hormones, that process of, for men, testosterone, for women, men obviously have some estrogen, but for women, we're talking estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone as well too, and that balance of it. That the sex hormones, like that process, sexual reproduction, it just gets lower on the priority list, right? Because it is a very energy costly process. Men, obviously not as much as it is for women. And so they obviously are going to be the ones that see a bigger detriment here with this. But again, it just comes down to that when we're in these lower energy states, the body's just, that's not as important as survival is, right? We need to stay alive. We need to keep the lights on here. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that's some extra spending that we just don't need right now. It's just not in the budget. So again, you start to see these adaptations if we're consistently keeping our calorie intake low because we're scared to see our scale weight come up in any form or fashion. Now, this doesn't mean that you should expect to just gain 20 pounds just overnight or in a month span. No, that is problematic itself, but we're talking this a couple 0 to 5 pound potential increase here. And so a small increase in scale weight when increasing calories, say you were in a fat loss phase, or maybe you feel like you're in the spot, increasing your calories a little bit, seeing a small increase in scale weight is going to be totally normal. And again, this doesn't mean that you automatically gain body fat. So we need to separate ourselves from that and getting out of that situation. So this is probably one reason why your maintenance calories feel low, is because you're never letting your body adjust to a higher caloric intake than what you're currently doing there. So we have to be really careful with that. Otherwise, you run into these issues and your maintenance calories are going to be lower over time. But the good news, like I said, is if you are in the situation where you've been doing this for a while, this doesn't mean you damaged your metabolism. We're able to reverse out of that and get out of that. But we have to be okay with seeing some scale weight come up potentially. Again, that's not always going to be the case. It's very dependent on many different things. I have an example here of a client where she dieted down to 136 from 172. Now, this was over multiple years. We had some other building phases, fat loss phases built within it. But her most recent fat loss phase, she got down to 136-ish. And she was very adamant of, hey, I really want to be careful with, I don't want to see a ton of fat gain come on in this process. And with that, now her scale weight is at 146, but she looks just as lean. Again, maybe she put on a tiny bit of body fat, but she basically looks just as lean. Body composition is just as good. And that was a tough process for her to get through, but we worked through it. And now she's feeling her best, but she had to work through that, disassociating herself from, hey, seeing scale weight come up equaling fat gain in that process. And now she's really able to push through and feel her best there. Okay, so that's the first one. Now, the second one is very related to that, but it's slightly different. Okay, so this is, you're trying to maintain a body weight that's too lean for you. So the first one was more of, oh, if I increase calories, say a couple hundred, I gain weight, that's not good, I'm in a surplus, I need to go back, right? And these two probably do go hand in hand. But with this one, it's you're trying to maintain a body weight that's too lean for you. So this is, some people are just trying to stay too lean, and at the state, their body just simply does not function well at long term. Okay. So again, this is especially common in highly active people, chronic dieters, and again, people scared to gain any body fat here in this situation. And so this could be like your absolute lowest body weight, or again, it can be a body fat percentage that we're talking about here specifically. And again, the most common people that will see that are people that they work out a lot, they like to train a lot, super active, they've always dieted, and they're scared to gain any amount of body fat here, right? They think that they need to stay shredded year round. They see people on Instagram and think that's normal. And the thing with this too is, for everybody has that range where they're going to look, feel, and perform their best. But sometimes people are trying to force that and they try to stay a bit too lean compared to where their body feels good at this point in time. Now, some of these things that we talk about here throughout this can also help, right? So one of them being muscle mass, like muscle can help with that. Obviously, your habits are going to help with how lean you can stay and feel good, right? If you're trying to stay overly lean, but you're also not sleeping well, you've always chronically dieted, so you don't have a lot of muscle mass, some other stress load is high, yeah, it's going to be harder to maintain that level of leanness. So everybody has, from a genetic standpoint, certain levels of body fat where they feel best at, they get below that, and they start to not feel as good. But where you fall on that is dependent on your habits and the skills and habits and body comp that you have there. What is that number for people? Where people are going to tend to start to run into issues is going to be for men anywhere from 10 to 15%. You're probably in a good spot. You get to the lower end of those 10 to 15% ranges. That's where genetically some people can handle 10%. I think if you can't maintain 10 to 12% as a male, it could be genetics, but it's probably more to do with habits than anything. And maybe you're just like a very, like, again, low body fat is a stressor on the body, and that's fine. We need some stressors on the body, but if we're also having a lot of stress on the body outside of that's where it can be harder to maintain that there. And again, everyone's going to look a little bit different in terms of where they store body fat, what they look like, right? Like just because somebody could look a lot leaner at 10% body fat than someone else, depending on where they store that body fat. But again, some people are just going to be able to maintain these leaner levels and have a high stress load and everything and be fine there. Just again, that's a genetic thing where their body feels comfortable. Today's modern environment, it's a great thing, but obviously hundreds, thousands of years ago, probably not a great thing because you would be at a higher risk of not eating, like not having enough fuel around there. So that's men, right? We're talking about 10 to 15%. You get to the lower end, that's where you're going to start to run into issues. You get under 10%, that's where you're definitely going to run into issues. You get under 7, 8%, and probably across the board, everybody's going to start to have some detriments. And we'll talk about what those are, some signs, and going on here. For women, need higher levels of body fat. So for them specifically, we're probably looking at where they're going to potentially start to run into issues would be somewhere between 18 to 22% body fat. Okay. And again, I'm not a fan of exact numbers here, so don't take any number. Like if you got a DEXA or something like that, yes, that will get us within the ballpark, but we can't be absolutely sure where you're at. That's why I'm saying kind of general ranges, what you look like, and then we'll talk about some potential signs that you're there, because that ultimately is going to be the biggest indicator are these signs. So women, you're kind of looking at 18 to 22%. Again, same thing there. You're on the higher end of that. You're less likely to run into some issues. If you are running into issues at the higher end of that number that I gave there, again, it's worth it to look into, am I just trying to drive myself in the ground? Because again, if you're highly active, you're not eating enough food, you're scared to gain any body fat, you are going to be, from a lifestyle perspective, you have some things that you can work on there to potentially be able to hang out leaner there. So this is again where if your maintenance calories are low, that is going to become problematic. Again, we want to look at the sleep side of things, et cetera. So again, you're looking at that. But again, once you get under that, say 16 to 18-ish%, that's where I feel like you for sure across the board are likely going to start to run into issues no matter what. And again, genetics will play a big role here in terms of if somebody can maintain a leaner physique and not have some of these symptoms that I'm going to talk about here. And again, this comes back to the reproduction aspects of things, right? That's why women need higher levels of essential body fat, is because that is a very energy costly process. So the body has sensors within it that's for women that's going to be like, whoa, we're starting to get too low here. This is not good. And so the body is a bit more protective of making sure that there's enough energy availability for the body. For women specifically, right? And that's why they just have a little bit higher of there's a little bit of a higher stress response to deficits and getting leaner in women than there is men. But across the board, once we get too lean, whether you're male or female, like you are going to start to run into some issues here. But those are general ideas of where that's at there. Again, you can look at body fat, but you can also kind of take body weight into this as well too. Again, if you're just trying to maintain a super low body weight, because like I said, the lower your body weight is, and if you are active, you probably have a decent amount of muscle, at least some, right? Now, again, if you don't weight train or you don't weight train in a great way, maybe you don't have as much. But again, we could think that BMI is going to be somewhat useful here in this situation, to where if you're maintaining a low BMI, that is probably going to be problematic. And so that's where we could take weight into this as well too. But the main driver is going to be your body fat levels for sure there, regardless of weight. But they do go hand in hand. And again, looking at both of those can be helpful in that situation. So that's why I say trying to maintain a body that's a body weight or body fat percentage that's too lean for you. Okay, so some potential signs that we're here in the spot are going to be menstrual cycle irregularities. So again, if we don't have if we're not menstruating regularly, outside of obviously birth control, stuff like that, perimenopause, that can start to make things a little bit noisy. But again, menstrual cycle irregularities are a sign that we are maintaining a body weight that's too lean for you. And because of that, our maintenance calories are going to be lower to maintain that, right? That's probably part of it, right? Not only is it, hey, you're trying to maintain too lean of a body weight, but in order to maintain that, you have to keep calories low until your maintenance calories feel super low in that process. We're looking at lower testosterone for men and even women too, lower thyroid output, lower T3, also higher reverse T3 as well too, probably poorer recovery. So again, if you're training and you're just feeling, you just don't have that, like you just can't recover, it's taking longer to recover, again, a sign that you are trying to maintain a body weight, body fat percentage that's too lean for you. Low libido, poor sleep, you're waking up in the middle of the night consistently. Again, we want to look at circadian rhythm stuff, but do those go hand in hand? Potentially constant fatigue, you're feeling cold, hair, skin, and nail, you're having issues with hair, skin, and nails, flat workouts. Like these are all potential signs that we're trying to maintain a body weight or level of leanness that is too lean for us. This is all your body adapting to low energy availability, chronic dieting, high stress load, and just staying lean for too long. In this situation, your maintenance calories are going to feel low because you're in that lower energy state. What is the fix here? It's being okay with probably seeing one, a little bit of a higher body weight, but then also bringing your body fat percentage up a little bit. Again, we can always look at, are there habits that we can work on to maybe allow you to maintain this leaner physique? But at the end of the day, there's going to be some adaptations that happen that will lower your total daily energy expenditure. So you're never going to maximize your maintenance calories if you're in this lean of a state. For most people, again, there's going to be that genetic, I talked about genetics. Some people's bodies are just not going to have that adaptation to this as much, and they can maintain a bit lower while eating higher calories. Their body there's just not going to be as much adaptation there. But again, no matter what, there's always going to be that tipping point where the body's going to be like, all right, we got to slow things down. And that's going to be different for everyone. For some people, again, that may be for men somewhere between 8% body fat. And for other men, it could be between 12%, right? So that's why I had this episode. Let me pull it up. It was a couple months ago. Here, let me pull this up. Episode 718, where I talk about finding the body fat range where you feel and perform your best. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, where we're trying to spend there most of the time. Again, there's nothing wrong with dipping into these lower energy states or leaner levels for periods of time. It's just more so when you do it for a long period of time that it can become problematic. And it's also with, hey, I feel like my maintenance calories are super low. Hey, I have these signs. That's where it can become problematic there. So those are the two big ones there as to why people feel like their maintenance calories are too low. They're scared to see scale weight come up at all, or they're just trying to maintain too low of a body weight, body fat percentage for them. And again, that can change over time by improving your habits as well too. So in adding some muscle. So this isn't like a, hey, every time you get to 12%, you're always stuck there, right? It could just be at that point in time with what you're doing, that is just too low there. So again, where you could potentially see this, there would be somebody that maybe has lost a lot of weight. And again, they're not necessarily at 10% body fat, but they lost 10 to 20% of their body weight or more. And it's like, for right now, you are probably trying to get too low and trying to stay too low for where your physiology is at right now until we start to add a little bit more muscle, continue to build habits, right? I think where you could really see this happen right now for people would be like a GLP-1, where you can override that system to get you to lose more weight at any one single time. So you can override that, but that can become problematic over time. And if you come off of it, then it's like super hard to maintain it. So again, for people that lost a lot of weight, again, 10 to 20% of your body weight, and maybe you're still like, I still have more to lose, but this is really freaking hard to maintain right now. Again, it's probably going to come down to you getting back to maintenance, increasing your calories a little bit, being okay with a little bit of body weight coming back on, working on your habits, staying there, not letting your weight continue to climb back up, staying around there. Again, that could be anywhere from 0 to 10 pounds that come back on, depending on your body weight, water weight fluctuations, how good you're doing that phase where maybe you add more muscle, but you need to spend some time back there. And then you can go down. And then now getting, say, for men, let's say you're at 25% body fat, you get down to 16, 17%. And this is where you start to run into issues. Maybe you stay around there from a body fat percentage. Maybe body weight comes up a little bit. Maybe body fat percentage comes up with it slightly, like 1%. And then you stay there for a while. And then you push down to stay closer to 10 to 12%. And now you can not only get there easier, but you can also maintain that level easier too, because you've continued to build habits, right? That's what I was getting at with the GLP-1 is because it's so powerful in terms of overriding appetite. A lot of people don't change, not everyone, but a lot of people don't change habits with it. And the lifestyle, like I said, the overall habits are going to dictate how lean you can stay and feel okay as well too, right? There's that. Okay, so those are two big ones. Now, next we have your tracking isn't as good as you think. So a lot of people say they're eating 1,800 calories, but then we have weekends untracked, bites, snacks, oils aren't logged, portions drift over time. Eating out changes everything, right? So if you do have a couple meals out, it's like so while your weekdays may average 1,800, their actual weekly intake may be much higher than that. When we start to factor in the weekends, et cetera, maybe it's the average is closer to 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, which could easily happen. I know a lot of people are like, there's no way, but that can easily happen. And so you can start to drift up this way. And at the end of the day, what your body's actually, there's no great way to actually know how many calories you're actually eating, but these are easy ways to where you think you're eating 1,800, but really it's 21, 2,200. And that's a big difference in terms of like your maintenance calories mentally, where it's, damn, okay, that's a good amount. I definitely feel much better with my maintenance being 22 than I feel like it is at 1,800, right? So that's where you have to be careful with this. Part of the reason your maintenance calories may feel so low in combination with the things I already talked about is just from a tracking aspect of it, right? And so your maintenance calories are determined by what you consistently eat and consume over time, not what the app says Monday through Friday. And we know there's some discrepancies in terms of meals eating out. Again, it's easy to mislog. It's easy to forget. It's easy to be off on your serving sizes. And calories, just because something says it has X amount of calories, can still be off by up to 25-ish% plus or minus. That's just within the general error that they allow for with what they say is in it. And then again, when you go out to eat, that's just a crapshoot at that point there. So again, your tracking may not be as good as you think. You may think you're at 1,800, but really you're at 21, 2,200 there. Okay, so number 4 is low muscle mass. So muscle mass is going to matter. If you've spent years dieting, avoiding weight gain, constantly cutting, never intentionally trying to build muscle, you just may not have as much muscle mass relative to your frame as you think. Just because you're weight training doesn't mean that you're just going to continue to balloon up, build as much muscle as possible. That is part of the battle. You need to stay consistent. That's obviously going to help. But within that, there's some X's and O's that need to be checked off for our body to continue to build more muscle. And then genetics will play a role as well, too. Some people can easily just go to the gym, do whatever the hell they want, and they'll just keep building muscle up to a point. But there's people that have to be more strategic with the X's and O's of what they do. And a lot of people, because of what they do, and especially if you're in this situation, again, you've probably spent a lot of time dieting. We know we can build muscle in a deficit, but it's probably not maximized there. If you're constantly cutting, you're avoiding weight gain. Again, we don't need a surplus to build muscle, but if we're avoiding the weight gains for the reason I said earlier, you've probably never put your body in the best position to build muscle. So it's kind of like you'll see some good progress, and then if you're consistently never eating enough, fueling your body enough, like things will slow down and you're not going to build as much muscle as you could be. Again, it just simply comes down to muscle is beyond what you tell your body, beyond what you do daily. Again, the stimulus that you place within your body, the body feels that resistance. And then it's okay, we obviously need to overcome this. So if that's the case, and this consistently happens, we need to build more muscle to be able, like it adapts to that, right? And so, but once it gets to a certain point, if it's not getting enough fuel regularly, and again, this doesn't mean a surplus, it's just, hey, enough protein, close to maintenance, enough fuel, right? But if you're always trying to keep your low body weight and you're eating 1,500 calories, you're not going to be able to maximize muscle and continue to put on muscle past a certain point there. Are you necessarily going to lose muscle? No, unless you're eating super low protein, you're not weight training whatsoever. And again, if your diet's just complete crap or sleep's just absolutely terrible, you're not likely going to lose muscle per se, but you're definitely not going to continue to build more. And it is a very slow process. It's just a slow process. And again, it's not an easy thing to continue to add more. It's easy to put on your first little bit from not training at all to training. That's easy because again, you're doing more than what your body was used to. So it's going to be like, hey, we do need to adapt to this. But there just comes that point where it's like more, in order for the body to be like, we need to build more, it really does need, it needs the resources available to be able to do that. And if it doesn't sense those resources, it's going to be like, hey, this isn't important right now. And these other things are way more important for survival than just adding more tissue that is also energy costly. And that comes back to this. It's energy. It costs a lot of energy to build. It costs energy to maintain. It do burn a little bit more muscle or a little bit more calories from a muscle standpoint when you do add it. It's not a ton. It's not like it's thousands and thousands of calories, but muscle in itself will expend a little bit more energy there. Again, I think one of the benefits of, so it is energy cost, before I go into that, it is an energy costly process. And so again, when we think from an evolutionary standpoint, when energy was scarce and it was definitely something that wasn't just readily available like it is today, the body has processes in places to slow down that process. Because it's like, again, it just doesn't make sense to continue to do that. Now, again, you're going to see some people from a genetic standpoint where maybe their body just, those signals are lower for them. And again, they can get away with things. They just have, for whatever reason, their genetic makeup, their body is primed to be able to add more muscle. There's a huge genetic component to adding muscle. But again, those are usually the people that aren't looking for more advice on how to build more muscle. It's damn okay. This is easy. So you do need to be careful with those people that do have a ton of muscle with them giving advice on things, which is interesting. Again, not across the board, but me, there's a much larger genetic component to adding muscle than there is, say, from a fat loss perspective. Again, still genetics involved with fat loss, but a lot less than building muscle. So you do need to be careful with that guy that's been training for 20 years and has a ton of muscle. Yes, they obviously know what they're doing, and you should take some advice from them and some wisdom from them, but you do have to just take it with a grain of salt, because they may have gotten there because of they may have gotten to that level of muscularity more so because of their genetics than some sort of special thing that they were doing, right? So again, you will have those people from a genetic standpoint. And then if we also come back to when you're in this low energy availability state, being too lean, a couple things. One, obviously, like we talked about, to maintain that, you may be on a lower caloric intake, which is not going to be good from building muscle. And then when you're in that low energy availability state, again, the body is not going to prioritize building muscle in that state, right? And your training performance is not as great. Potentially, you're probably not going to be able to do as much. And some of it is direct, but it's also indirect too. But more muscle generally is going to help support higher energy expenditure. So like I said, your muscle does build or does increase caloric burn a little bit. Probably where it's going to be most beneficial is it does allow you obviously to maintain a little bit of a higher body weight. Body weight is going to have a huge impact on your total daily energy expenditure. A bigger body is going to expend more energy than a smaller one, right? So if you're adding some muscle and if you're just trying to maintain 120 pounds, but adding some muscle is going to get you to 125, 130, that person at 130 is going to expend more energy than the person at 120, generally speaking. Better glucose disposal. So your body's going to utilize the food you give it much better, improve training capacity, and improve body composition over time, which again, that's going to allow you to potentially stay leaner at a little bit of a higher caloric intake as well too. So muscle's super important. Number 5 is you're trying to maintain high output on low calories. So this is a big one. If you're training hard, doing a lot of cardio, highly active, stressed, sleeping poorly, while also trying to keep calories very low, your body's going to adapt to this. This is similar to the first couple ones, but again, you'll often see a lower T3 thyroid output, which is going to have impact on your energy expenditure. Reduced recovery, again, lower spontaneous movement. So that's going to make your maintenance calories lower because you're not going to have that just spontaneous movement, hands moving, blinking, fidgeting, etc. Increased fatigue. So now you're less likely to want to go and move. You're less likely to want to go and push your training. Right now, that's going to start to impact your ability to add muscle, which we know is also going to impact your total daily energy expenditure, and reduce performance. You're just not going to perform as well in your training. And again, this tends to become even more pronounced in leaner individuals, chronic dieters, and people below where their body feels best physiologically. So it comes back to probably 1 and 2 a little bit, and combining that with this high output. High output being, again, you're training hard, doing a lot of cardio, so your energy out is high, but if our energy in is low because, again, you are scared to gain weight, whatever it is, the larger that gap is, the more your body's going to compensate. So it's like you do more, but you're getting less out of it, and there's adaptations that are in place, and it's just not setting you up great from a body composition either, which again is counterintuitive to what a lot of people would think and do in the real world there. So again, you're trying to maintain too high output on low calories there. So again, that's going to lower your maintenance calories for you there. So again, what's the fix there? The fix there is to increase your calories to match that output, or do a little bit of a combo of both. Hey, maybe for a short period of time, I'm going to take a little bit of a deload from high output training, decrease that a little bit, increase my calories just a tiny bit to get things to be a little bit more even there. And that can fix all these things. And then you can figure out where you need to go next. I probably will build a bit more muscle for you there as well too. So, all right, number 6 is you're always trying to lose just a little bit more. So a lot of people never actually spend meaningful time outside of a fat loss phase. They're never satisfied with where they're at. So they're like, hey, I just need to keep losing a little bit more. So they're always pushing a small deficit. They're trying to tighten up slightly more, trying to maintain their leanest physique year round. And so over time, this can keep maintenance calories artificially suppressed. So again, if you're always just trying to lose a little bit more, trying to get a little bit leaner, you will get to this, what I like to call artificially low maintenance calories, where your body adapts to that. And it's maybe if you're in a small deficit, it's not necessarily problematic, but again, you're just making your maintenance calories be lower than what they could be throughout the year. Again, spending some time outside of a fat loss phase will ironically increase your total daily energy expenditure there. So again, if you are someone that's always just trying to lose a little bit more, like that's probably part of the reason why you feel like you eat 1,500 calories and you just gain weight. We need to take that time outside of fat loss. So for clients in these situations, the solutions are typically increasing calories strategically. So not just adding 1,000 calories of pizza every single day. It's, hey, let's strategically increase your calories here. Again, maybe it's a small increase. Let's watch your body weight. Because what I see happen a lot of times is if somebody can stick through that weird phase where you go from a lower caloric intake to increasing calories a little bit, yeah, you may see body weight come up in the very short term, but it tends to stabilize over the next couple of weeks. And sometimes I've seen it come up a little bit for people. They stick with it and it comes down a little bit. For some people, it stays around this, it comes up a little bit and it stays around there. But again, eventually it does stabilize. But we have to first be okay with increasing those calories, but we also need to do it strategically. Improving things outside of the gym. So we need to continue to pay attention to circadian rhythm, sleep, stress load. These are vitally important in this process as well, because if those things are nailed and we're gaining a little bit of weight, you can, in your weight training, eating enough protein, like that's probably going to be good weight. There's a thing, good versus bad weight. Gain less body fat, and you would likely, again, it would be glycogen storage, it would be going to muscle, etc. Obviously, we want to build muscle during this period of time, so focused on hypertrophy, so making sure we build some muscle and eating enough protein there. And spending time at maintenance in a surplus / slightly higher body fat levels. And so when I say that, it's, if you're trying to maintain your absolute lowest weight or scale weight or body fat percentage, like we do probably need to see things come up a little bit in some situations. And again, where that's going to be, it's just dependent on how lean you get and where your body feels best at. So it's hard to give an exact number, but you're looking at anywhere probably from 2 to 10 pounds. But for some people, it could be no weight gain, like none weight. I don't know why I'm having a hard time saying that, but no weight gain at all. It could be that for some people, but that's probably more the exception than the rule on that. Again, your body's not meant to stay in a perpetual fat loss phase forever, at least in today's modern environment, right? There probably is you'll hear people say, hey, there's some benefit to long-term caloric restriction on longevity. I don't think that I would never have somebody be in a deficit forever, right? I do think that spending time at maintenance, there's a lot of benefit to that, but still running a fat loss phase every once in a while. And then from there, to me, it ultimately comes down to what are your habits? That's going to be the best there for that. But especially in today's modern environment too, with how much calorie dense food is out there, right? It's tough to be in this low kind of energy, low maintenance calorie state, artificially low maintenance calories all the time because of the just modern food environment. So really, I think the goal is to get you to add a little bit of muscle and try and get those calories up as high as we can. And then again, find that sweet spot to where you look good, maybe not necessarily your most shredded, leanest, smallest, but you look good enough, you feel good, and you perform well. And then we can have these periods of time where we do dip into that, okay, I look freaking good, get you down, milk that out for a couple months, strategically manage things on the way back up, hang around there for long periods of time, rinse and repeat with that. And over time, you continue to maybe push the boundaries of this. You continue to build habits, etc. Right? That's the name of the game there. So hope this was helpful. If you guys found this podcast to be helpful, if you could leave a rating and review. And then if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff_. That's where I'm most active. And I'll talk to you guys soon.